Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine Season 2 wrap-up. My name is James.
And my name is Kim. And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time.
Welcome back to the podcast. In this week's episode, it is actually a wrap-up of Season 2, which amazingly we got to the end of.
It felt like it took a very long time, but then somehow it also didn't feel like it took very long. I don't know. This whole pandemic is messing with time.
Yeah, time is soup.
Yeah, I say that all the time.
It wasn't helped by the fact that some of those middle episodes in this season, I think Atiba summed it up as next generation runoff. Scripts they had sitting around.
Yeah. When I was going through putting my episodes in order, there were a handful of them that it was like, It's like, I don't know. I didn't hate it. I didn't like it. I didn't love it. I don't know. It was fine.
Filler.
Exactly, yes. But I think really in terms of episodes that I really detested, there's only one. So, you know what? That's not so bad.
Okay, well, with that, should we start with the email first?
Well, I can do some listener feedback. It's not all email. The first one that I have is actually a 5-star iTunes review that we got quite a while ago at this point. It was in the summer, but it was after we had finished doing the wrap-up for Season 1.
We're more than happy to take 5-star reviews.
Would love some more reviews. Yeah, we haven't had a review since then. We actually mostly get email from people, and we got a couple of people who went to talkthroughmedia.com and added some feedback on individual episodes, but generally it's email. And then, but yeah, I would love to get a couple more 5-star reviews. Why not? It's an easy way for people to find us.
But thank you for your feedback.
Yes. So the 5-star review that we have says, I can't wait for Sundays to hear Kim and James do a nice recap of each episode as if they're watching it in real time. These two bring their views and humor to make a nice package. It's fun to hear the hits and misses regarding women in the future, Kim's segment, and I like Jim's overanalysis section, which often includes how characters are growing and changing, and a segment on leadership. I never miss an episode. Such a wonderful way to spend the pandemic and beyond.
Thank you.
That was very nice. Then on to the website. So you can go to talkthroughmedia.com and you can add comments on individual episodes. You can also leave audio feedback there, although I don't think anybody's done that for us. You can do that, but the easiest way is just to go and make a quick comment. Or, of course, you can send us an email at ReBingeIT@gmail.com. But on the website, Michael made this comment saying Season 1 of DS9 has a lot of episodes where Julian is creepy, and the writers are experimenting with how to do normal Star Trek things on a station that doesn't really go anywhere. This episode, which was the alternate that he was commenting on, and the one before it feel more like Season 1 pitches that got picked up for Season 2 than episodes written for Season 2, where they've started doing more with Bajoran politics and character-focused story arcs. I think I complained in this episode that Julian had reverted to creeping on Dax just before that Odo monster attacked him, if you remember. I believe that's what Michael here is talking about. Then on the episode Rules of Acquisition, we had some feedback from Erin. Erin actually gave us feedback on several episodes, and I didn't include them all here. Anyone can go to talkthroughmedia.com and read her comments and also respond if you're interested. But I just picked this one out from Rules of Acquisition, and she said, first, I want to say that I am not a fan of the Ferengi way of treating women. I enjoy Quark at times, but anytime he talks about women, I want someone to punch him.
I can see why you liked her feedback.
Totally. This is an episode where it could have had a good lesson, but some of the dialogue choices at the end actually set back its message, I feel. I'm going to venture a guess before I listen and say Kim didn't like it, but let's see how she votes. I do wish they had either shown or referenced Pell later in the series to show she's doing great financially to prove her point about how women could do just as well as the men, but sadly they never do. This is what I mean by the ending letting me down in terms of how Quark could have grown from this encounter and how she herself kind of betrays her own statement.
I felt that episode was such a miss. I think they had such an opportunity there and so managed to flub it.
Right. I'm sure we talked about it in the episode. There were just so many opportunities there to go in so many different directions, and they just went down the easiest, most cliche-iest path. I'm pretty sure I just made that word up, but
it works.
They just did not make great choices in that episode, and nobody came out smelling like a rose at the end. It was just not good.
I still feel, having watched that episode again, it was very much a same-sex relationship episode. But given its time frame, that kind of thing was still not really acceptable on TV because people's children will watch this. Which is a reference to BoJack Horseman, by the way.
A show I don't watch. Erin did ask a question. Here's her question. She says, if 5 bars of Latinum is a good price for deals, is Dax officially loaded because she was pulling out a lot of strips from the bowl at the poker game? That's hilarious. Actually, I don't think she's pulling out full bars, right? Those are just small little strips.
Yeah.
So they're probably not worth that much. Anyway, she continues. The use of Latinum makes no sense to me on the ship because they have replicators. So it's not like they really are want for anything, and you could just charge for a holosuite rental or make Quark give you one if you press hard enough. So why was it even used in the series, really?
Ah, I know you've researched this.
I can get maybe non-Federation groups using it as trade, but on the station it's like, why even use it beyond as chips because it seems to have no real value. I never know if Quark is making a huge deal or normal deal because all deals usually end with some money which excites him, so it's hard to tell why the Ferengi value it so much. I just never understood the big deal about Latinum in a setting where no currency of any kind is shown. So I totally understand what she's saying here. I had some of my own questions about Latinum, and I did look up why they don't just replicate Latinum. And apparently there are certain things that the replicators simply can't replicate. And there was a whole sciencey reason behind it, which, you know me, I never care about the details of it. But the replicator can actually not make Latinum. So I suppose because it's a thing that cannot be replicated, it does have some kind of value.
Yes.
And for some reason, it's incredibly important to the Ferengi.
Yes. It contains several molecules of plutonium, which is the substance that the writers use to advance the plot.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Then we move on to an email from Michael. He says, hi, I've been enjoying the show, listening to episode 37, Playing God. The complaints about the tolerance of Quark's behavior clicked with a conclusion I had come to in my last watch of TNG. In the original series, the Prime Directive wasn't even a consideration in episodes like Balance of Power, where Kirk arms villagers with the same weapons the Klingons have armed a competing village with. At that time, it was viewed as restoring the natural development of the planet by bringing the balance of power back to the civilizations there. By the time of Deep Space Nine's The Circle, the Federation refuses to get involved in stopping the attempted coup because, despite Cardassian interference, the Prime Directive applies, Ben, which is something an admiral said to him.
Yet again, proof of Atiba's comment that all admirals are evil.
This is representative of a shift in Federation thinking towards moral relativism to the point of moral cowardice.
Ooh.
He lists several examples, like he starts talking about TNG and the episode Angel 1, which I coincidentally watched just last night for a different podcast.
If you remember when you were reading this to me, I was shouting, yes, exactly. This is my whole point.
Yes. So he goes on to say, in the 24th century, the Federation implicitly condones these regimes by continuing to work with them under the guise of moral relativism. In reality, it's more of a moral cowardice, a refusal to do something to stop an injustice while comforting themselves in a Prime Directive blanket, giving them a sense of moral superiority. On TNG, this didn't result in a lot of bad interpersonal behavior because the Enterprise is a Federation vessel with Federation crew who treat each other the way the Federation's values preach. On Deep Space Nine, however, there are a lot of non-Federation citizens such as Quark. Now, because the Federation preaches moral relativism, the Starfleet officers all behave that way, letting Quark's assault slide as a part of Ferengi culture, in yet another act of moral cowardice, masquerading as moral relativism. Sisko may have even lectured Kira about not dismembering Quark for it off-screen. So I don't think the leeway Quark gets is a new behavior for Starfleet officers. I think it's just a natural extension of a flaw in the Federation shown in TNG. I'm not sure this was intended by the writers, but they were at least somehow aware of the flaws with the Federation's philosophy at the time, as demonstrated by the quote below. I look forward to the next episode.
Completely agree with Michael there. That is a very good summary of what I've complained about.
So he says the quote below, and here's the quote that he included. Captain, there's a lot to admire in the Federation, but there's a hint of moral cowardice in your dealings with non-aligned planets. You do business with a government that's crushing us, and then you say you aren't involved. You're very much involved. You just don't want to get dirty. That's the quote that he included.
Nice. The quote comes from a character called Finn from the TNG episode, The High Ground. And the episode revolves around the Federation basically supporting an oppressive regime and at the same time pretending that it's none of their business and that's not really what they're doing anyway.
Uh-huh. And then we got this email just very recently from Sherry.
Hello, Sherry.
It says, hello, I just wanted to tell you how much I'm enjoying your DS9 Rewatch podcast. I've watched DS9 all the way through back in the day. Now I am watching episodes along with you. You guys do a great job, and quite often I laugh along with you. Keep up the good work. Sherry.
Well, thank you, Sherry.
Oh, thanks, Sherry.
I can relate to what Sherry's saying there because a lot of the episodes I saw a couple of times and then maybe never saw again. But the episodes I really like, I don't know, maybe I saw them half a dozen times if it was an episode that I just really connected with me. But I haven't watched any of them terribly recently. So this is why I'm enjoying making the podcast, because I'm getting to rewatch a lot of things that, to a large extent, I've pretty much forgotten.
Oh, right. When I go back and watch episodes of TNG, even though I love that show and probably watched it, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times the whole show, because they were airing, the reruns were on every night at 10 o'clock.
Right.
And I would watch it every night before I went to bed. And that just went on for years.
Yeah.
But when I watch them now, I only remember the ones that had really strong impacts on me. And like
parallels.
Data's Day, I remembered pretty vividly. And Measure of a Man, I remember that one vividly. And then some of the later ones, like in season 7 with Parallels, I remember that one vividly. And I mean, no one will ever forget Best of Both Worlds. Once you see that, that's ingrained in you forever.
Yes.
But it is funny now when I go back and watch some of them, I'm like, did I see this? Because it's so long ago.
Yeah.
But still love it. Well, thank you, Sherry. Keep watching with us.
Yes.
We really appreciate having you along for the ride.
And tell all your friends.
Next email is from Chris, and Chris says, I love Deep Space Nine and your podcast. Keep it up. Do you have a Patreon membership? I'd support you. Well, we don't have a Patreon. We're doing this strictly for fun. I'm not sure we expected the response that we would be getting. I think we maybe just thought it was the two of us talking about Star Trek. I mean, I'm not really sure what
50 years of Star Trek.
Thank you, Siri. What the heck was that? All of a sudden, Siri is on the podcast.
Oh, Siri wants to be on the podcast. Okay.
Anyway, I'm not sure what we expected, but we get these great emails and we have a lot of listeners and it's all great. So who knows, maybe someday we'll start a Patreon if there's enough interest. But for now, we've just made ourselves some ReBingeIT t-shirts and we're happy about it. So we have our own merch that we sit around in and wear them around the house in the pandemic.
I'm currently wearing our @ReBingeIT t-shirt.
Hey, I should take a picture of that for when we release this. That can be our picture.
Oh, absolutely.
On social media.
But in the meantime, anybody, please go ahead, tell your friends, colleagues, other Star Trek nerds. We're always hopeful for more listeners and for people to enjoy Deep Space Nine. I'm certainly in favor of having more viewers for Deep Space Nine because I think it's the Star Trek series that resonated with me the most.
And I like anybody who sends me an email to say that they're enjoying the podcast or they agree with me. That just makes me happy.
That seems pretty appropriate.
Yeah. We got an email from Robbie. Robbie says, hey there, I'm approaching 30. Don't rub it in, Robbie. And I'm just getting into Star Trek for the first time. I'd never seen any Star Trek outside a few seconds of TNG or Voyager here and there before switching channels while I was growing up. However, I recently started watching TNG with my roommates and almost instantly fell in love, even the first season despite its flaws. So much so that I had to choose another series to watch when I couldn't get my Trek watching crew together but still needed a fix. I chose DS9 because of its reputation as a somewhat overlooked but seminal work of science fiction television. Once again, I quickly fell for the show, far more easily than Kim, and the only thing that was missing was someone to discuss each episode with. That's where the two of you came in. I was overjoyed to find a podcast that went through the series one episode at a time and also had the utmost respect for the first-time viewers, never giving too much away about the show's progression, other than the fact that it keeps getting better. I've just finished watching season 1, and I am loving the series, and I'm loving the insights and overanalysis that the two of you bring to the show, as well as the challenging perspectives about women in the future. The show can definitely be very disappointing on that front, and I'm with you in hoping that it is one of the things that keeps improving with the rest of the show. Love the unique perspective that each of you bring and how they complement each other to provide a much more thorough and nuanced analysis than either of you would do on your own. And lastly, the way that the two of you really listen to one another and soften and let each other's opinions change the way that you view certain events or episodes. So I just wanted to say thanks, and I'm happy that you have found a wonderful way to enrich the world and keep yourselves busy during wacky pandemic times. Keep up the awesome work.
Thank you, Robbie. Glad to have you listening.
Well, I really like the point that he makes. The reason that I chose this email is where he talks about how we actually do listen to each other's opinions. And I think in many cases, we've changed each other's minds about various things. Maybe not really big things, but certainly in small areas where we will see something in a certain way. And then we'll listen to how the other person sees it. And it's just like, oh, of course, if you looked at it that way, it makes so much more sense.
Following on from that on episode 20, I thought of Tiba's comment when he said how seeing it from a woman's perspective changed some of his views of the episodes or gave him another perspective into the episode. And that's very much something that I really didn't take into consideration when watching it and thinking about the show because you never watched it with me. So it's something that I'm seeing a different aspect from as well.
But also just in general, when we talk about graphic novels that you read,
Yes.
I don't really read them, but when we talk about the novels that you read, or when we watch other shows together, I know that you will often attribute some traits to me about a character and why they did something or how they think about something. And I would just respond with, that's not how I would look at it at all. And we would have these deep discussions about things that were not Star Trek in many cases. So I like the fact that we're able to bring that same kind of energy to these conversations.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree.
Next is an email from John. John says, y'all deserve a break. Thank you very much.
Yes, we do.
While I'm bored this Sunday, I thought I might lend feelings to paper. I missed the weekly podcast of A Good Show. I look forward to Discovery 3, meaning I'm sure he means season 3. I found you good folks while listening to Picard. And again, he's probably talking about the Star Trek Picard podcast that is on Talk Through Media.
Go and listen to it.
Yes, where they actually talk about Rebinge Deep Space Nine on there as well. Anyway, he says, I found you good folks while listening to Picard. Shows like Umbrella Academy for Netflix give you a whole season at once. I think the kids call it a binge. Picard and the like let you digest the episode before feeding another. In the week, your brain consciously and subconsciously rolls the episode around in your brain. Then listening to others' perspectives can expand horizons and enrich the episode. Even though I've seen most of Deep Space Nine, I usually watch the episode you're doing on Sunday, my day off, in the afternoon. And sometimes later I listen. Oh, and thanks again.
You're welcome.
All right, here's the last of the big emails, and then we've just got a couple small ones. So this one we just got very recently. And Pauline says, I love your podcast and look forward to it every week. I find myself equally agreeing, disagreeing with James and Kim's viewpoints, and particularly appreciate listening to a female co-host. I've tried some other DS9 podcasts, but have stopped because yours is the best in every way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauline.
Much appreciated.
It's so professionally produced. Your rapport is so easy and genuine. It was a lovely surprise to find out you're married. We weren't surprised. We knew from the beginning. And your commentary is fun without being annoying or too snarky. It must take a lot of effort to produce these every week, and the output reflects that care. I've been a TNG fan since '92, but never watched DS9 until I binged the whole series during the early months of the pandemic.
Wow, that is impressive.
I've had to admit to myself recently that it has probably overtaken TNG as the best Star Trek series in my personal rankings list. Captain Picard will always be my favorite captain, but DS9 as a series is just so rewatchable, complex, and still current.
Yes.
Especially during these times.
It's scarily current.
I can't wait to hear Kim's opinion as she gets to season 3 in particular and sees these characters develop. I never liked the Ferengi or Klingon on TNG, but DS9 has made these species likable and interesting to me in unexpected ways. The random tennis references also make me chuckle when they come up. Kai Opaka, Naomi Osaka, Federer's headband reference. And I listened to a Kim tennis podcast for sure. A grateful listener, Pauline.
Thank you, Pauline. Kim would love to do a tennis podcast.
All over a tennis podcast, yeah. Yes, thank you, Pauline. The comment about it being professionally produced is a comment that I really appreciate. We have spent a great deal of time and effort to make sure that the sound quality is high. I've given up on a number of podcasts, many of them Star Trek podcasts, that I have tried to listen to, but the sound quality was just so poor that I actually just had to give up. And then when we started making ours, I think our sound quality in the beginning was okay. We felt like it was okay. But after like a couple of episodes, we started to just want it to be better and better. So I feel like we've improved quite a bit, but I will always appreciate anybody who notices that. So thank you for that, because it really is quite time consuming, but
yes, it is.
We're not able to do it any other way. We want it to sound great every time.
We're slightly obsessive about sound quality.
We really are. And we struggled when we had a guest because we didn't have full control over his sound quality. So yeah. I don't know. Hopefully, if we have a guest again, we can force the person to come to our house when there's no pandemic. We'll see how that goes.
Yes, that was quite an experience.
Yes.
From a technical standpoint, it was quite interesting. Both of us did editing on that episode, and you would think it would, having a third person, it would be, 33% more difficult to edit.
No.
Kim laughs. Exactly.
Because somehow it was 100% more difficult.
Yes, it was a lot harder to do than I expected.
Yeah.
I think both of us found that.
Well, I think also we're so used to it with two.
Yeah.
That just really threw me for a loop. I needed a monitor that was 3 times the size of the monitor I have. It was very challenging. It took us a really long time, especially the first one. The second one wasn't quite as bad. Yeah. But the first one the recording was so long.
Right. Yeah. We did like to talk a lot. Okay, well, we have a short email here from HandshotFirst11871. I wonder if that's a star date. I'm seeing as the universes cross over, although they haven't crossed over as much in the first one.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, he asks, As Kim has pointed out, Deep Space Nine is somewhat like a floating gas station. Can you tell me what type of gas station you think it is? Is it a franchise one, or is it one of those really scary ones you see on a rural road somewhere that you don't want to stop at?
First of all, I don't know what it means to be a franchise gas station. I just think it's run down and the kind that you would run into out somewhere in rural America when you're just trying to get some gas. And you're very confused by the peculiar locals.
Okay.
One time, James and I were driving somewhere, and I don't want to say where because I don't want to disparage any location. But we were driving to somewhere, and we pulled off of the freeway because we needed gas. I don't think it was urgent, but we felt like it was going to be quite a ways, I think, till the next stop at a gas station. And we drove into the parking lot of this gas station that I believe the exact words that I said when we looked at the place were these. This is a place where people go in and you never see them again. That was the scariest gas station I've ever seen in my life. We did not go in. We backed out and got back on the freeway and kept going to the next place. So I assume that's what you're referring to.
That is a completely true story, by the way. That is exactly what happened.
Here's an email from Stuart. Stuart says, hey, Kim and James, thanks for this walkthrough of DS9. I hadn't watched it in a while, and I stumbled into your podcast when I heard it mentioned in the Star Trek Discovery podcast, also on talkthroughmedia.com.
Go and listen to it.
I'm really enjoying the banter between you two and the way you really listen to each other. This isn't something that you find in a lot of Star Trek podcasts. You two are like grown-ups watching a show that I also love. I'm walking through it with you, and I look forward to your episode every week. Thanks for doing this, Stuart. Thanks, Stuart. That is really nice.
Wow, it's the first time I've ever been called a grown-up.
It probably is the first time. KRZ says, hi, love your podcast. You guys are great. That's the kind of email I love.
Thank you.
Here, this one is from Ken1701A. That's how he signed it.
Oh, very good.
Dear James and Kim, thank you for this podcast. You're very easy to listen to and your podcast sounds great. Sometimes other podcasts don't spend enough time making sure their sound quality is good, and it kind of gets on my nerves. I relate to Ken1701A. This is great. You guys obviously make an effort and I appreciate it. I will listen forever. Ken from Indiana. So 1701A, located in Indiana.
Thank you, Ken.
Carrie R. says, James and Kim, I have watched Deep Space Nine many times, maybe hundreds of times, or maybe I exaggerate, but somehow you manage to bring up things I've not thought of before, and that is making it fun to watch it again. I hope you keep going because it just gets amazing from here, and I think by the end, you will both love it. At least I hope so. Here's one from somebody who did not give a name. Obviously, I have an email address, but I'm not going to share it. Maybe I should. It says, in all caps, it is not a gas station or a strip mall. That's the whole email. That's it.
I agree with them 100%.
Yeah, you could send them an email and tell them you agree with them.
My partner in crime does not agree.
Oh my gosh, that made me laugh.
Has not agreed since the original airing.
Nope.
And I blame Cyndi Lauper for that.
Cyndi Lauper in TV Guide.
If you're listening, Cyndi, it's your fault.
I'm sure she's listening. Come on. The last email I have is from Aaron, and Aaron says, this is a different Aaron from the above Aaron. Dear podcast people, thanks for the podcast. I enjoyed your guest that you had on for the Maquis episodes, although I can't remember his name right now, and I hope you have more guests in the future. Thank you, Aaron. His name is Atiba Royster, and his website is atibaroyster.com, and I'm sure he loves you too.
And he can also be found at horrorgasmsd.com.
That's right.
So check out his work. He's a very talented artist and a good friend of the podcast. And he will be back on again.
So he says. That is it. Mailbag is closed. That was pretty good.
Thank you for all your emails.
Well, we should probably now talk about the actual shows.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about the least favorite or the most favorite first?
Well, let's start with the least favorite.
Okay. Bottom 5, least favorite.
And this is in reverse order. So 5 is the best of the worst.
Okay.
And 1 is the worst of the worst.
Okay. Go.
Number 5, the Jem'Hadar.
Oh, you hated that camping scene so much.
Yes, I thought it was a great episode, ruined by the Griswold camping trip.
Ruined by nature, like so many things. Wow.
Other than that, it was quite a good episode, but it was also very Star Trek tropey, where the enemy turns up and is massively overpowered.
Yeah, wow, okay.
Next one, Profit and Loss, or as it's also known, Who Shot Quark.
Wow, okay.
I didn't think that one was great. I mean, well, I think part of the problem with that was because of its sequence in the series, it didn't make as much sense. If that one had been before Rules of Acquisition, it would have worked better. But because it wasn't, it didn't make a lot of sense.
Okay.
Number 3, Rivals.
Okay. Yep.
Such a throwaway episode. I mean,
Purple.
Yep.
Luck balls.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Number 2, The Alternate. That was just poor. It had some potential, but it was like, Odo has daddy issues. Okay, really?
Yeah.
And then number 1 on the just flush this one, Playing God.
The worst of the worst was Playing God. Really?
Yep.
Where, pray tell, on your list? Well, actually, I shouldn't ask until I do my list, and then I'm going to ask you where some of mine
Okay.
are.
Start your list, Cam.
All right, number 5 on my list is Melora.
Wow, okay.
I didn't think that episode was terrible. I rated it neutral. You rated it thumbs up.
Yes.
I kept track of both of our thumbs this time. I just didn't think it was great. And there were so many cliches that we talked quite a bit about when we watched that episode, and it just didn't seem quite right.
Yeah.
Number 4 on my least worst to most worst is Rivals. Totally agree with you. The purple luck balls were stupid.
Yes, they were.
The next one, number 3, is Sanctuary with the flaky skin
Really?
people.
Interesting.
So many opportunities for that
Yeah.
episode to be better, and it just wasn't. Number 2, Playing God.
Yep.
Totally
Yep.
agree with you. And the worst episode of the season, Rules of Acquisition. That episode nearly made me stop watching the show
That makes
altogether.
sense.
I don't know if you remember that,
Yep.
but that was the bottom of the barrel. Where on your overall list was Rules of Acquisition, or was it just somewhere in the middle?
Rules of Acquisition was on the worst list, number 6.
Okay, so it was next.
Yeah.
All right.
It was the next one up.
Okay. I guess I can forgive that then.
It could have swapped with the Jem'Hadar.
I am so surprised that the Jem'Hadar is in the bottom 5. We should have asked Atiba for his bottom 5 and top 10.
Oh, yeah. We think of these things later.
It's too late. All right. Well, that is quite fascinating.
So I think we should go on to the top 10. And let's start with your top 10, Kim.
Oh, sure. My number 10 is Armageddon Game. That was the Dilbert hair.
Oh, yeah.
Not a great episode, but there were so many just okay episodes in the list.
Yeah.
Number 9 was Paradise. I, again, didn't really think Paradise was a great episode, but there were so many great things for us to talk about in that episode. All those awesome examples of what a dangerous weapon leadership is.
Yeah.
And I just really love talking about leadership, obviously. So I really like that. Number 8 is Homecoming, which was the first episode of the season. Number 7, Blood Oath.
Blood Oath, I thought, was a clever episode of having the actors from the original series as Klingons.
Yeah.
It had a nice hook to it.
I liked the gimmick of it, and I thought all 3 of those guys did a really good job.
Oh,
and
yes.
I also appreciated a Dax episode where she was both useful and she had the opportunity to do a little bit of acting. It threw more logs on this fire that we have about Curzon being a terrible person, right? There's still some evidence of that in this episode.
Right. Yeah.
I appreciated a Dax episode that wasn't awful.
Roger.
Number 6, The Collaborator. Quite like that episode. It didn't get very good IMDb ratings, but I actually quite enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. It was that very sort of classic Star Trek where the person was doing something very selfless to protect the greater good. And it took a while for somebody else to figure it out. And then they agreed to carry on that sort of sham in the end when, Vedic Bareil was protecting Kaiopaka because what Kaiopaka had done had caused the death of a bunch of people, but it also caused the death of her own son. So it was a sacrifice she had made for the greater good, but Bareil recognized that it wasn't going to be looked upon that way. And he didn't want to sort of wreck the legacy that Kaiopaka had left behind.
That was a very selfless act by him.
It was good. And of course, it had Kai Wynn in it. And actually, she became the Kai in that episode. But I mean, you can't go wrong with Louise Fletcher.
Yes.
So number 5 on my list is Crossover. That was the Mirror Universe.
Yep.
Loved it. Number 4 is Tribunal. Number 3 is The Siege, which was the 3rd episode of the season.
Yep.
Number 2 is The Circle, which was the 2nd episode of the season. It had that little evidence of teamwork in it that I love and crave and miss in the rest of the season. It had that scene that you really didn't like and that scene that I loved.
I know. We saw it differently.
And the best episode of the season was very easily for me, The Wire.
Oh, really?
It was a great episode with Garrick. I loved that episode.
Really?
Yep.
Interesting. I will start on my top 10.
Yeah. What are your top 10?
Okay. I have lumped the marquee parts 1 and 2 into a single rating. They are my number 10 on the list.
Okay. Making your own rules. Okay.
Yes.
No problem.
I look at them as an episode together, and it's difficult to split them out for me personally. So I'm rating that as 10. Number 9 is Crossover.
Too far down.
Number 8, The Collaborator. That was a great episode. Number 7, Necessary Evil.
Wow. Okay. This was the film noir episode.
The sort of detective noir aspect of it really kind of just clicked with me. I did like that a lot. Number 6, Tribunal.
Tribunal was a great episode. We didn't really talk about it when I was going through my list, but yeah, that is really good. It showed the acting chops of many different people.
Yes.
It had some great guest stars. Yeah, overall, it was good. It also spawned some really good conversations about whether or not the Federation was just doing that thing, that moral relativism thing that we talked about in the mailbag, of just sort of standing back and letting things happen, or just, writing a strongly worded letter instead of taking action.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Number 5, Melora.
Melora is your number 5?
Yes, because I think that was the first episode where we actually start to see the Bashir that he becomes. That this is somebody who isn't just an arrogant ass all the time.
Yeah, but he did go back to being an arrogant ass in one of the later episodes.
But like you said, they felt like scripts that were left lying around, and they're like, we need to fill something up. Just use one of those.
Well, I didn't say that. One of our emailers did. But yes.
Yeah.
And I think Atiba said that too.
Yeah. And I think Melora was a good episode for Alexander Siddig as well, for him to actually do some acting that wasn't just go on there and just seem like an ass.
Can I make a counterpoint?
I would expect nothing less.
There's a scene in Melora where Jadzia and Melora are in a runabout doing something. And they spend the entire time talking about boys.
Because it's high school.
It was so offensive to me that I'm just not going to get over that anytime soon. I mean, that's a good example of where we just have to do better for these female characters. Right. That's completely ridiculous to think that you put these two brilliant women together and that's what they're going to do, that they're going to revert to high school. Will they ever talk about relationships? Of course, people talk about relationships. Is it the only thing that they would talk about? No, it is not the only thing.
I think I liked it for very different reasons then.
You liked it for different reasons than I disliked it, which is fine.
Number 4, Blood Oath. Klingons, Dax actually doing something, Klingon battles with Batlats, very unbloody battles, I'll point out.
Right. I really like those Klingons.
Yes.
they were great.
I really enjoyed that episode. That's one of those episodes that I think its rewatchability is extremely high.
And that guy playing Kang, I loved his voice so much.
Yes.
He has the voice probably of someone who could play a great villain, especially in an animated series. It was good, yeah.
I think I mentioned it in the episode that these guys, to me, kind of parallel Christopher Plummer's character in Undiscovered Country. And in terms of Klingon villains, I loved Christopher Plummer's character in that.
Okay. I support 4.
Number 3, Paradise.
Okay.
I really enjoyed how controlling Elixis was and how Cisco was really very prepared to stand by principles he believed in. More than I think we've seen before or since in this season. I thought that was a very solid episode.
Yeah, I thought that was a very solid episode, and we had a lot of good discussions in that over-analysis section about whether or not Cisco standing up for his principles was actually the right thing to do as the leader, where he was supposed to be protecting Miles. And that certainly generated some really interesting conversations. But yeah, overall, that was a great episode with really solid performances. So yeah, I support that.
Yep. Number 2, The Wire.
Oh, yeah.
This was an episode that I pretty much remembered the whole episode from its original airing. I've always enjoyed this episode. It's without a doubt one of my favorites. I think it's the first time we see the actor playing Garrick really be able to express the character and really bring some depth to it. And at the same time, we also see more of that Julian who
Yes.
actually is a doctor and a caring individual. And I think
Yes.
those things really make that just a great episode.
That was the most Star Trek-y that Julian has been.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
really appreciated him in that episode. And yes, the acting again was great. I loved that true believer that came out of Garrick and,
Yeah, oh yes.
was so cool. But regardless of that, Bashir was going to do everything to save his life. And it didn't matter when Garrick tried to talk him out of it. It was just really good. I always like those episodes where, and not just of Star Trek, but of TV shows,
Yeah.
where you see the people push to their extremes and you see how they react. Because that's the thing that, you kind of hope that doesn't really happen to you in real life. But that's the part where we really step into fiction and we're really pushing these characters to their limits and it just becomes interesting. So I support that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
With The Wire at number 2, I'm waiting with bated breath for number 1.
Okay. As I think they all work together as a single unit, Homecoming, The Circle, The Siege.
You grouped them together.
Group them all together as the number one.
I see. You cheated a little bit.
I kind of cheated, but...
Yeah, so you've actually got 3 extra episodes in your top 10 because I see how you work. Okay.
Yes, I have a 13-element top 10 list.
Well, I struggled a bit because I actually had the Jem'Hadar in the top 10 for a while, like right kind of at the bottom. And I moved it up and down a few times and I was like, gosh, I don't know. I know that you really didn't like that camping thing. That part didn't really bother me, but I was bothered by some of the Quark stuff in that episode. So ultimately I dropped it out of the top 10. So I kind of get your argument there. The Maquis was also a struggle for me because I thought part 1 was really dull.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was terrible. I just really found it dull. And even though I gave that one a thumbs down, I didn't have that in my bottom 5. I still thought it was better than a couple other ones like Whispers, which was pretty good, but not great. And that's the episode that we kept saying was the okayest episode of the season.
Yeah.
And I also ranked it above Second Sight, which was the one where Sisko had the invisible girlfriend. And that too was a very TNG episode, but not memorable.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. That was a pure TNG plot. Literally, you could have put any TNG character in that position and it would have been a TNG episode.
I think I'm most surprised by 2 things in your list.
Yes.
One of them is Melora in the top 5, which we already talked about. Mm-hmm. But the other one was the alternate in the bottom 5. I actually quite liked the alternate. I'm surprised that you didn't like that one. That was in your bottom 5, right? Talk a little bit more about that one.
I think the things that I didn't like about that one were Dax is a scientist and the other guy's a scientist, and they bring back a life form that they don't understand, that they don't look at its environment or what it needs to live, and basically let it die. And then there's the obelisk that they never go back to or deal with again. There's so many holes in that one. And ultimately, it's Odo didn't have a good relationship with the guy who thinks he's his father.
Yes.
It felt weak.
And they kept doing that thing, too, where they called him his dad, even though Odo kept saying he's not my dad. And it's just like, come on, people.
Yeah.
Be nicer to him.
Exactly. You've pointed this out before with Odo. If he says he doesn't like something and they just ignore him.
Right.
That's not terribly pleasant.
Then the other thing I'm surprised by, or maybe the last thing, is that Profit and Loss is in your bottom 5. You gave it a thumbs up. Rules of Acquisition, which you gave a thumbs down, was not in your bottom 5.
It's because Rules of Acquisition was consistent with Quark's storyline, Quark's behavior, and all the negative aspects of them. But I think Profit and Loss then stands that on its head. And you're like, wait a minute, Quark really can fall in love.
That's true. They made him a bit of a hero, which didn't fit.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think if you did these 2 episodes in reverse and you had Profit and Loss first, it would be better storytelling because it would make Quark seem like he developed a cynical edge because of lost love.
Yeah.
It was as much Quark's own fears, as much as biases against Pell.
I see.
In that situation. And I think it would have worked better, much better as a storyline. Because I found Profit and Loss so hard to believe when Quark is such an ass towards women.
Yeah.
And then this woman from his past turns up and he's doughy-eyed and in love again. It's like, really? Pell was perfect for you, dude.
No, I think that makes sense.
Perfect.
You're saying that Rules of Acquisition was more true to the character of Quark.
Yeah.
Even though it was awful, because he's awful.
Yes.
But Profit and Loss wasn't true to that character. even though he
Exactly.
was a better person in that episode.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, are there any lessons to be learned from this overall list?
Any lessons to be learned? More episodes like 1, 2, and 3. Less episodes like Rules of Acquisition and Profit and Loss.
Fewer.
Okay.
What's funny to me is we started out strong. We both liked those first 3 episodes very much. And then it kind of went into, I don't know, we coasted maybe.
Filler.
And then we ended really strong.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Even though you didn't like the very last episode, which I get, but the ones leading up to that, Tribunal and Crossover and The Collaborator.
Yeah, great episodes.
And The Wire, right? Those are all towards the end of the season.
Yep.
So they ended strong again, like we did last season.
Well, really, Blood Oath was when it started that upswing.
Right. Let's just talk about a couple of other things here before we wrap up.
Okay.
Let's talk about guest stars. Who do you think were the best guest stars of season 2?
Oh, well, the problem is, if you have Louise Fletcher on, it's pretty much done.
She can't be beat.
Her Vedic win and then Kai win is just outstanding. She brings this subtlety of evil to the role.
Right.
It's beautiful to watch. And then if I give a second place, Frank Langella. Come on.
Frank Langella was very good, and those two were very good together. I think if you looked at Louise Fletcher as sort of a recurring guest star rather than a one-episode star, you could maybe put her in her own category as, you know, she's incredible. I'm not sure anyone on this list could possibly be better than her for season 2. I think she's tremendous.
Agreed.
But if I put her in her own category, then my next person on my list is Gail Strickland, who played Alexis in Paradise. I thought she was really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
And right behind her was Fritz Weaver as Kovat in Tribunal. I don't know. I really liked him. He played that character just so well as this person who was really just an actor in a play.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the end, when he won the case for the first time in his entire life, and he had that little moment of, oh my God, they're going to execute me.
Yeah.
It was so meaningful. I really liked him.
Right. His job wasn't to fight and win cases. It was to give the impression of justice.
Yes. But also, you could easily nominate all 3 of the Klingons from Blood Oath. They were all great.
Oh, agreed. They all got it.
I think the only disappointing person I had on the list was Bernie Casey. I don't think Bernie Casey as Cal really did everything that he could have with that character. It was just a little bit of a dud.
I think I saw what he was going for. I think he was aiming for a guy who was just kind of tired of the crap. And it came off on screen. Maybe it was the editing, maybe the direction.
Yeah.
And it came off as he was just kind of reading lines. It came off like he wasn't very excited by it.
Yeah, which maybe was his choice. He was trying to show a guy kind of beaten down by the system. But when he chose his new life of going into the Maquis, I didn't see the fire in his eyes even then.
Yeah.
A little disappointing.
I probably blame that on direction.
Sure.
He had the first part down, but that finding the new life didn't really, I get you.
Which reminds me, we never talked about the fact that Avery Brooks directed an episode of season 2.
He did, didn't he?
He directed Tribunal, one of our favorite episodes.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to best plotline.
Oh, best plotline.
I put Blood Oath.
Really?
I actually really liked the fact that they tied it back to an original series. Well, not really to anything from the original series, but they tied it back to the characters from the original series. Yeah. And then there was that whole tie-in with the novel, and I like that. I very easily could have also picked the first 3 episodes of the season, which was quite good, but I picked Blood Oath.
I picked the first 3. Homecoming, Circle, Siege.
Just as good.
Yeah, that was a very good plot line.
How about worst plot line?
Rivals.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah. Rivals could have actually been better, but for whatever reason, they just didn't manage to pull it off.
How about most Star Trek thing to have happened?
Oh, easy. Sisko talking Lionel Luther's girlfriend into not killing Dax and giving up in Invasive Procedures.
Oh, excellent one.
Yeah.
That is a very good one. I forgot about that, or I may have chosen that, but I chose Blood Oath and bringing back 3 old Klingons to settle a score in a non-Starfleet way, but then never talk about it again.
Oh, that is a very good one.
Yeah. And the least Star Trek thing to have happened.
Sisko's rant in the Maquis.
Really?
Yep.
When he rants when Kira comes in?
Yes, where he says about that it's easy to be an angel in paradise or such like.
Interesting. I'm not sure I agree with that. I felt like that was something that Picard easily could have done.
Really? I would not see Picard ranting like that and complaining about his superiors and Starfleet.
But I can see him in that scene where he's standing up and he's just like, what does she think I'm trying to do? And, it's so easy to be sort of on your high horse and think this particular way when you're in this kind of situation. I don't know. I could see him having that conversation maybe with Troy.
Really?
Or Riker.
Yeah.
Not something you would have said to anybody else, but something in a more personal conversation.
Ah.
But okay, I'll accept that.
Yeah, I couldn't see him doing that.
Well, I dump the proto-universe back in the Gamma Quadrant, the drive-by and playing God.
Oh,
right.
They
just went, oh, here you go. And they flew back. I was like, what? That was ridiculous.
Quick, throw it out the window and keep driving.
Total drive-by.
This is probably a British term, but I guess they were fly tippers.
I think you said that once before, and I still don't know what it is.
It means basically going somewhere and illegally dumping your garbage.
Oh. How about best performance by a regular?
Oh, this one was a tough one. I couldn't decide. It was on the edge between Kira. Well, actually, it's a three-way tie. Kira, Sisko, and Miles.
In what? Or just overall?
Overall. But I'm leaning towards Kira because I think she's been given the most chances to actually shine.
Yeah, like in crossover and
Yes. With Miles coming in second.
Yeah, Miles had a couple of good chances.
Yeah.
I actually wavered between Garrick, who is Andrew Robinson in The Wire, and Avery Brooks in Paradise. I thought those two individual performances were great. Then I had a couple other categories I wrote down, which was character who needs the most work.
Dax.
Last year I wrote Bashir. This year I wrote Quark. Because, boy, I learned to dislike Quark this season.
What do you mean by work?
It needs better writing. Needs improvement in the writing.
I put Dax because at this point in the story arc, she is so underused, underdeveloped, underutilized. And I honestly had forgotten.
Yeah. It's certainly in season 1.
Yeah.
In season 2, she at least had Blood Oath. But other than that, she didn't have a lot to do.
Right.
So is that the same thing you have for a character who needs development?
Yes.
Yeah, I also had Dax for that. How about most improved?
Bashir. We start to see Bashir becoming what he will be.
Yeah, we did see it a couple times. I wrote sometimes Nog and sometimes not, and sometimes Bashir and sometimes not. Because we had like these little hints of where Nog was better, and then he kind of reverted, and then Bashir was like, okay, he was a little bit better here, and then he was great in invasive procedures, but then he sort of had that backward step in the alternate, and he was great in The Wire. So yeah, sometimes yes and sometimes no. Well,
this isn't a spoiler because I've said it to you before, but when you look back at the end of this series, the final end of this series, the characters who are most radically changed from where they were originally are Nog and Rom.
Right. That is what I've heard. All right, last category is costumes. I wrote The Collaborator because Vedic Wynn's outfit, which was a repeat of last season, was great. But then she switched into the boring gold Kai outfit.
Well,
her outfit was great.
Yeah, that's another problem. Louise Fletcher in the whole Vedic outfit. Yeah, that's well fitted. Looks amazing on her. She wears it so well. How can anybody compete with that?
I thought you might pick Leather Kira from crossover.
Leather Kira was kind of cool, you know.
Yeah, it wasn't really an impressive outfit.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good club outfit.
Yeah, she could go clubbing in that outfit.
Yeah. In Kai Wynn's outfit, I wouldn't ask her, you wear that to work? I would ask that of Leather Kira.
Right.
Seeing as we're on costumes, one additional thing I wanted to add is hairstyles. In any episode, I don't think anyone has managed to beat the hair in Armageddon Game.
Well,
it was hilariously bad.
It was so like Dilbert, just straight out of the cartoon.
Yes.
But also in Tribunal, the character Makbar, she had very similar hair, if you recall.
Right.
But yeah, that was memorable hair. And I know I have never seen that episode before or any pictures from it because I would have remembered.
I had completely forgotten about it.
It was extreme.
Very funny.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of the categories and the end of season 2.
Yes, indeed.
So I believe our plan is we're going to take 1 week off and then we will be back with the first episode of season 3 on March 21st.
Yes.
In the meantime, if you would like to send us your own overanalysis of Season 2 or of any episode, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com. We might read your email out. You can also tweet us at ReBingeIT. You can check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for individual episodes there. And you can also check out all the other podcasts on our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.